My name is Julie Turney, and this is the HR Sound Off podcast show, the show created for HR and business professionals to discuss pertinent topics and trends as it relates to our professions. We're going to have amazing conversations with HR professionals from all over the world, get to learn their origin stories. How did they get into this profession? What do they love about being here? And how they want to set the record straight on that one misconception that really drives them crazy about our profession. Are you ready? I'm ready. Then let's sound off. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the HR Sound Off podcast show. My name is Julie Turney, and I am your host. Today, I have the honor, the distinct privilege of being here with the amazing speaker, extraordinaire trainer, author, mentor, coach, guide, Joan Underwood. How are you today?
I'm doing just great. Thank you for asking, and thank you for inviting me to be with you.
You are very welcome, Joan. I know that we are operating under some challenges today, but we're going to get through this. I promise you that. So why don't we start, Joan, with you telling everyone, who is Joan Underwood? What is your story? How did you get here?
Well, my story has many a winding path. So I am Joan Underwood, born in Antigua and Barbuda to a Dominican mother and a Montreal father. So I'm first generation Antiguan and Barbudan along with my siblings.
Okay.
I spent, the first 17 years of my life in Antigua and Barbuda before going off to university in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to St. Mary's University in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Okay.
That was my first time, being that far away from home.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, I had essentially just traveled within the region. And it wasn't for me. So I did my 4 years, and I remember when I was leaving saying, if I never see this place again, that will be okay for me. And it did take me, decades before I went back. The next time I went back to Halifax was like 2013, and I left in 1984.
Yeah.
So I really, was determined, okay, that did work for me. The cold wasn't for me at all. And so anyway, I did a bachelor's degree, went home, and my first career actually, and I don't even know if you know this, Julie, even though you've known me for quite some time now, my first career was actually in laboratory medicine.
No, I never knew that about you.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day.
You're too young. So because this was like in the mid 80s.
Okay. Yeah.
So for 7.5 years, I worked then the Helgesen Hospital. I was working as a technician. It occurred to me, what I perceived back then is that there was a lack of planning. There was inadequate policy and strategic orientation in terms of how things were done. And I'll share how it manifested, because it's instructive for us in HR in terms of thinking strategically and planning not just for today, but planning for the longer term horizon.
Absolutely.
So I had promoted in my role as head of the Department of Anatomical Pathology, increased pap smears in our community clinics and also in the private doctor's offices, because we were seeing a lot of women coming in with invasive cervical cancer. And cervical cancer is something that can be prevented.
Right.
And so we went on a very aggressive public health education campaign, and we encouraged women to come in and get their pap smears done. And we increased the number of smears exponentially. And then it went south because management wasn't keeping up with us. So we were running out of reagents. So the women were coming in, and then we couldn't process their sample. And it's not as if they didn't know we were doing this public education campaign. It's not as if they didn't know that we were projecting the increased volume, but they didn't put the systems in place to accommodate it, right? And so I decided, you know what? I need to go and do a master's degree in health services administration. And so I did that. And I went off to the George Washington University Hospital in Washington, D.C.
Right.
And another story here in terms of, being confident about the choices that you make, even if you can't map out the entire journey. They said to me, oh, it's not your turn yet. There are people senior to you in the system. So you have to wait until it's your turn to get an opportunity to go and study. It just made no sense. Hopkins training facility in this area, in the world, not in the US, in the world.
Yeah.
They take 4 students every year. 4 students. Wow. I was one of 1. You're telling me it's not your turn to get study, so you can't go.
Wow.
I got a complete scholarship to pay for everything. And you're telling me that I should say no to that because it's not my turn yet. And so I resigned, and it was a one-line letter of resignation. I hereby resign with immediate effect.
Yeah.
And I packed my bags and I left.
Wow.
So technically I was unemployed.
Yeah.
So, but I'm like, I'll deal with that when the time comes. Right now, I have a year to complete this course and to excel at it. And that's where I'm going to focus my energy. And, God is good, because I went off and I did my studies. And by the time I came back with my master's, a community hospital was then looking for an administrator. So I didn't go back into the government system. I went into the private sector to manage a community hospital.
Right.
So that was my second career then. So I'm now in health services management and policy.
Yeah.
And again, to encourage folks, even though things don't go exactly as you plan them to, be prepared. My brother who coaches soccer had, an under 12 soccer player said to him, because he said to the kid who was on the sideline, say his name is Jimmy. Jimmy,
Right.
get ready. I'm going to put you in. And the child says, Coach, I am ready. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And the wisdom coming out of that child, because that's something that is so profound.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so just stay in a state of readiness for the opportunities that will come your way. And so eventually I transitioned from the healthcare sector completely and went in general management. So this would have happened around 2000. I did my MBA in general management. I became the general manager for a private company, and then was hired away from that company to design and implement a tourism-related project. Wow. And when I had finished running that project for a year, they said to me, we have another project for you. We'd like you to come on board and start an HR department for us. Wow. No, at that time, I had less than 0 interest in HR. I was a generalist, right? But again, the option was being unemployed or taking this gig. So I negotiated with the managing director. I said, here's what, you tell me what it is that you want to accomplish, and I'll see if I can do that for you. And he laid out what he wanted this new HR department to achieve. Because at the time they had a personnel department, which was, real old school, tracking attendance, running payroll. Yeah. And I mean, I wanted to do that as much as I wanted to stick needles in my eyes. Right. So I said to him,
that was very graphic. I actually visualized that.
I said to him, look, I can do what you need to have done, but I have a request of my own. I said, first off, I don't want to just do HR. So my first request is that you make it HR and strategic development. And that's instructive because you see this thing about getting a seat at the table. My very first HR gig, I already had a seat at the table. And I only accepted it because that was a guaranteed part of the job profile. Right. So, because I just can't imagine doing it any other way.
And there's a lesson in that too about being able to negotiate your role. Because
Yes.
organizations don't know what they want until you put before them what is possible.
Yeah.
So I love that. Very courageous of you.
Well, the thing is, it was a risk, and that's another powerful lesson there for us.
Yeah.
And I in my training and with my coaching clients, there's a saying, sometimes you have to be like the turtle.
Yeah.
He makes progress only when he sticks his neck out.
Mm.
All right. So if you're going to keep your neck withdrawn into the shell,
Yep.
be prepared to stay where you are.
Wow.
If you're willing to take some risks, then you can really make some progress. And so I negotiated that it would be HR and strategic development.
Yeah.
I negotiated that they would give me the latitude to make some harsh, unpopular decisions, but that I would not abuse that concession.
Privilege.
I would be very careful, and I would not lead them down a road that would cause advances.
Yeah.
But I also said to him, the culture needs to change, and sometimes you have to pay to make your problems go away. So I say, so I may have some terminations that I need you to back me with, and I need to know that you're not going to balk when that time comes, because this was an organization, no one ever got fired.
Right.
If someone, insubordinate, they would just transfer them, because it was a conglomerate. They had multiple companies. They would just move them around. And I said, we got to break the back of that.
Yes.
Right? Because it sends a terrible message
Yeah.
to your high performers as well as to the slackers.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to have a public slaying or two, and I need you to back me with that. And this is negotiated all up front.
Now that's an interesting one, Joan. I gotta stop you there a second, because I think this is something that's not very popular, right? Where you talk about having to make some slayings, and that's a decision that you were able to make, because that's not something that's normal in HR. No. So what made you make that particular decision? Was that because you had the general manager mentality, the mentality of being able to manage? Now, for us as HR, we don't have that, and a lot of times we may not even have that license, right, to make that decision. So what is your advice?
Well, first of all, you have to be at the top of your game. So you have to have the credibility because you're good at what you do.
Yeah.
You have to know your legal and regulatory framework inside out. You have to know your profession inside out. So you can't be using outdated concepts. You have to be on the cutting edge, so that when you're advising the people around the table, that you show up in a way that's fully informed. You absolutely have to understand the business model, because I was able to talk to them in terms of, this is how this is impacting your bottom line.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be able to read financials. Okay. No, I had an MBA. I had been a GM. I had sat on boards. So I knew how to prepare financials. I knew how to read and interpret financials, and I knew how to have a conversation about financials.
Yes.
If you don't have that, as part of your skill set, as part of your competencies, your credibility drops, because then the finance people suck up the air in the room. The marketing people suck, because they know how to have those conversations. They know.
Yep.
Right? So you can't expect folks to lower the bar to make you comfortable. Right? You have to step your game up. So that's something that I would say to HR practitioners. Don't expect anyone to just give you a seat at the table because you're a nice person, or because HR just should be there. You got to earn it. And then when you get there, deliver consistently. Yeah.
When you get there, don't freeze.
And, it can happen, but don't make it a pattern. Your comeback has to be amazing.
Yes.
Right. So you are going to go through a learning curve. Right. but ensure that every time you show up better than you did the last time.
Right.
I had one experience where the financial controller in that same conglomerate said to me, and I don't know that it was intended as a compliment, but I chose to take it that way. And she was like, the board always goes easy on you. Everything you ask them for, you get. And I said, they're not going easy on me. Before I ask them for anything, I do my homework. And I show them that it's in their best interest to go the route that I'm recommending. And then tell them to hold me accountable if I don't deliver.
Yes. Accountability is everything, huh?
It's huge. It really is.
It really is. So continue your journey. You were telling us. Now you're leading an organization. So let me come back to, you have your seat at the table, but how did you get here? Because you're not there.
Yes, indeed. But I want to touch on accountability because you picked up on that. And it's, I mean, I'm really passionate about accountability. And I want to say that the same way I negotiated a seat at the table for my very first HR role, my concession in order to secure that seat, and I said to him, if I don't deliver the 3 things that you've asked me to do within 3 years, you won't have to fire me. I'll leave on my own. Right? So I didn't wait for him to express any reservations about it. I was the one, because he was offering me a permanent job. I said, no, I won't take a permanent job. I've said to you, I can do this in 3 years. I'll take a 3-year contract. And if I don't deliver, I'll leave. You won't have to ask me to leave. Okay. I ended up being there for, gosh, I think it was about 9 years. All right. So
I was waiting for the ridiculousness. So you delivered and then some.
And the third thing that I had negotiated is that after the 3 years, because remember, I wasn't a fan of HR. After the 3 years, I had said, after 3 years, you'll take the HR away from me and I'll groom somebody to do it. Right. And just leave me with strategic development.
I love that.
Because that's where I was. That's where my mindset was. Well, after the 3 years, I didn't want to let go of HR. So
it happens, right?
I fell in love with it. I really fell in love with it.
Awesome.
So I did that for about 9 years. And then another major shift, because in 2009 is when I left that organization, and I left it to join the office of the Prime Minister as his chief implementation officer.
What?
Now, big shift.
You left government, went private, went back to government, went private, and went back up to government again at the Prime Minister's office. Wow, Joan. Listen.
And HR had a role to play there. Right? The Prime Minister at the time was Winston Baldwin Spencer. And PM Spencer, a lifelong trade unionist. This was his second term in office, and public sector transformation was big on his agenda. Now, as a trade unionist, he was absolutely resolved that he didn't want this to be managed by the finance people. He wanted it to be managed by someone who would focus on the people side of it.
Nice. And
so he asked me to. By then, I was known as an HR person. And so he says, you know, I want you to come and be my advisor when it comes to public sector transformation. And the government at the time was also looking at a divestment program. And he was like, I don't want people to get lost in this. So it was because I had spent all that time in HR and I'd been the president of the Employers Federation. So the Prime Minister asked me to come and work full time with him. And so that was another major shift. And again, HR was part of what I brought to the table as value added. It's sitting in the office of the Prime Minister.
Now, just go back a little bit, because my this audience is an international audience. And so for those of us who don't know, like, explain what the Employers Federation Council, what the Confederation Council, sorry, does.
Okay, so the Employers Federation is what is called in Antigua and Barbuda. Similar names throughout the region.
Yeah.
It's like a trade union for employers. So this is the umbrella organization for, primarily private sector entities.
Yeah.
So the Employers Federation will advise employers. We will lobby in terms of amendments to labor laws. We negotiate for the government policies to be, favorable to industry and commerce, etc. We do a lot of training for the members of the organization, that type of thing, to help them take their HR policies and procedures to the next level.
Got it. Thank you. Continue.
Now, as you ask about the Employers Federation, something that's interesting, and for as long as I've been an HR practitioner, there is a big gaping hole in my experience, and I'll tell you what it is. I have never operated in a unionized environment. So how are you interpreting that? I'll tell you why I think that's the case. What do you read into that?
For me personally, I never operated in a unionized environment because I felt like people mattered and I wanted the opportunity to focus on synergizing people and leaders. And I always feel like the unions get in the way. It's almost like I remember some years ago, someone saying to me, divorce lawyers are the worst lawyers because they help to add to the divisions. And then that's what makes divorces so messy. And that's why people recommend conciliation and having a mediator in between to help you sort things out. And I always felt like I never wanted anyone to impact the way I wanted to humanize the workplace. And that's why I never got involved with unions. And I'm thinking that's probably why you did too, unionized environments. Am I right?
So clearly it wasn't my choice whether persons were unionized or not, because they have the right of association, right? The thing is, when I set up the HR department for this conglomerate, they weren't unionized at the time. And I told you how I went in there. I went in there with certain concessions up front that this is not transitional change, this is transformational change.
Exactly.
And because I had that mandate, I went after the best in class HR policies and procedures. And like you, having been a GM, I already knew, listen, the way to make this entity successful is to treat the people right. Exactly. And so I wasn't waiting for someone to come from outside the organization to tell me what we needed to do to do right by our staff. So there was a point in time where there was some talk of unionization. And so what I did is I did some research. I looked at the benefits packages and general conditions of work, because it was in the financial services sector of the other financial institutions. And what we found is that our benefits package was more attractive. The total benefits package. Because we weren't necessarily paying the best salaries. But when we looked at what we had in terms of tuition reimbursement, medical, insurance, health, and everything else, right? And so I said to the staff, you absolutely have the right to unionize, okay? When that happens, I won't be the one negotiating for you anymore. You're going to give that responsibility to the union. Let me show you what I've done on your behalf since I've been in this role. Let me show you what the other banks have, and then you can decide if you want to replace me as your primary advocate. And they opted to stay with what they have, right? So it's a bit of a deficiency that I've never worked in a unionized environment. I'm not complaining.
Me either. We're still here. We are still here. So where are you now? What is your current role? And how are you feeling about that?
Listen, right now, I cannot imagine being in a better place. I'm at the point where I'm doing work that I love, work that feeds my soul.
Yes.
I have a boutique consulting firm, and thank God I have the ability to be able to say no to projects that don't feed my soul. So I only do things that I'm passionate about, where I think I can make a difference and where it will impact the quality of lives positively.
Yeah.
So my firm is named after me. It's Underwood Talent Development Services.
Nice.
And one thing I have said, I don't do operational HR anymore. I've been there, done that, and I think I've paid my
right.
dues.
Absolutely.
So, but I exactly. And I think where I operate in terms of the talent development sphere, that I help to set the foundation for the operational things to happen.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of work in leadership development. I still have a passion for strategic development. So I do strategic HR.
Yes,
right?
you do, and you do it well.
And I
I've
do
been in your
strategic
class already.
management and planning generally. I Yes, you have. That's how we met, actually, with my doing that training at the Cavill School of Business. And so I am huge. I'm a master trainer, a certified master trainer. I love leadership development programming. I'm at my happiest when I'm designing training intervention. And for me, so sometimes clients who don't quite understand how leadership development works, they may call and they say, oh, we need training for all our managers. And I was like, okay, how do you know that? What gap is it that you're trying to fill? Or they're not performing to the level that we need them to. Yes, but how do you know that that's due to a knowledge or skill gap? It could be that they don't have the enabling environment that, permits them to do the things they want to do. So let's come in and do a diagnostic assessment and figure out
what's going on.
And then I design based on what we found with the diagnostic assessment. And I've had clients say, oh, remember that program that you did for us a few years ago? Because I've done leadership development programming for our entire management team. I love working with intact management teams. And they'll say, we want you to come back and do it again. And I was like, but how do you know it's the same thing that you need? We got to go through it. I mean, things have changed. People have changed. We need to start from where we started last time. Do the diagnostic assessment. I know you're pleased with the program we did before and you have new talent, so you just want to put them through the same program. But these are different people with different needs, maybe. So let's do the diagnostic assessment. And I think as consultants, as HR practitioners, we really do need to stand our ground with that. Absolutely. It's too easy to just take stuff off the shelf. Or have someone who's really popular out there doing fantastic work, getting rave reviews, and say, oh, let's bring that here. How do you know it's what you need?
Exactly. It's funny that you said that, because I was actually talking with a client today who was expressing the same thing, that her leaders are asking for coaching. And I was like, but how do they know that they need coaching? Like, how do they know that that's exactly what they need? And what kind of coaching are they talking about? I'm like, I think you need to dig a little deeper and maybe understand what their leadership issues are. And maybe do like a leadership risk, leadership impact kind of assessment to figure out where everybody's at. Then that will lend more to helping you figure out what they need to be coached on, So I definitely agree with you. You have to figure out you have to meet people where they're at, but you got to know where they're at first.
Exactly. And then help them to get to where you need to be. And that's something else that I think that as HR practitioners, whether you're in the organization or you're coming in as a consultant, you really need to show up and narrative in a way that is persuasive, so that even though they may have started out thinking that they need to do this diagnostic assessment, that you impress upon them the importance of doing it this way, because otherwise they could be spending their money and not getting the desired result. So a question that I always ask, who are the decision makers in this? And can we bring them into the process early?
Yeah.
And then once they're around the table, my next question is, what would constitute success from your perspective?
Yeah.
And I want to hear that from everyone around the table, because people may have different criteria for what constitutes success.
Mm-hmm. We will return to my interview with Joan Underwood after these brief messages from our sponsor. Our sponsor for this podcast episode is Ability CBT. Ability CBT is an internet-based cognitive behavioral therapy program designed to provide effective mental health care to people dealing with a variety of concerns, including anxiety, depression, trauma, grief, and more. The program is guided by experienced therapists who are there to help you understand and navigate your mental health concerns and build long-lasting coping skills. Accessible from any device at any time, Ability CBT is delivered through a secure digital platform to combine the benefits of an in-person therapy with the convenience of virtual access for fast, easy, and effective support. Ability CBT also offers a targeted program to help address mental health concerns related to the uniquely challenging aspects of pandemics, including uncertainty, isolation, burnout, caring for family and community members, information overload, and stress management. Ability CBT can be accessed online at myicbt.com or by downloading the Ability CBT app from Google Play or the App Store. You deserve to feel better. We now return back to our interview with Joan Underwood. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. What a journey. What a life you have lived already, and such a huge model of what it is to be a female in leadership in the Caribbean, especially. But you're such a powerhouse, Joan, and it's always a pleasure to, have a conversation with you and learn from you. You're always full of great ideas, and you're always willing to share your knowledge. And I think that that's one of the things that really drew me to you when I was looking for someone to guide, to learn from. So I really appreciate you for all that you've done. But you've done so much more. Now you are an author. So tell us about your book. What is the title of your book, and what is it about?
Okay, so the title of my book is Manager's First Aid Kit. The transition from individual contributor or knowledge worker to people manager,
Yes.
people leader, is fraught with difficulty. And unfortunately, the majority of folks who make that transition either fail outright or underperform in their first 2 years. The knowledge, skills, and abilities you need to succeed as a line staff, it's not the same that you need to succeed as a manager. And unfortunately, companies, employers do not prepare people before the promotion.
No, they do
You kind of get promoted, and for the most part, you have to figure it out yourself.
Yes.
And it's a very lonely experience.
It is.
You don't necessarily want to admit that you're struggling, because after all, you were just celebrated. You just got this promotion.
Yes.
I mean, some people may be envious of you, so you don't want to be vulnerable by admitting that, listen, I'm struggling here. So people go through and they learn by trial and error. Their morale takes a beating. And it's just unnecessarily traumatic.
Yeah.
And so in terms, you said how much I like sharing. I realized, listen, I can't coach everybody. And so that's why I committed to writing the book.
Awesome. And where can we pick up this book?
Of course, on Amazon. So if you, no matter where you are in the world, you could get the book on Amazon. It's also available on my website. And so my website is UTDS Inc. That's INC. So utdsinc.com, and you can just look at my author tab. And there's some other books that I've written as well, which are available through my webpage.
Nice.
If you're in Antigua and Barbuda, it's available at the Methodist Bookshop and the books. In Dominica, it's available at a local bookshop, and the same in Jamaica at Kingston Bookstore. Nice. So, Lots of places where you can get it, and it's available in print form, electronic form, and on Audible.
Audible, yes. Awesome. So proud of you, Joan. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm sure that a lot of managers and aspiring managers or leaders, I should say, are going to benefit from these golden nuggets that you are sharing, which is based on your experience and also your knowledge, and just being able to compact that into this one book so that people can benefit from it. We're very grateful. Will there be a book 2?
Oh, absolutely. As I said, I've already started writing. So I've brought out a number of smaller books which expand on some of the areas in the book, because, as you know, having written the book yourself, you can't put everything into one book.
You can't. You can't.
So I've been listening to the feedback, and there's some specific areas that folks have said, we want more on this.
Nice. So thank you so much for sharing that, Joan. I am so looking forward to continuing to following your journey, being a part of your community and learning more from you. So thank you so much. But tell us, what are you reading, watching, listening to right now that you think our audience would benefit from?
Oh my goodness. Right now I'm so excited about this book.
Okay.
How Women Rise. And, it just came to my attention at the right moment, because I'm very active on social media, specifically LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And I do September Self-Improvement Month. And I decided to devote all of my postings in September to helping people get unstuck. And folks have just been lapping it up. And they've been sharing stories with me. And there's a lot of pain, a lot of anxiety. They just feel that else to do. I come in, I do my best. I'm not getting the recognition. I'm not getting the upward mobility. And, maybe I should just give up.
Yeah.
And so focusing on getting unstuck, that's what I was doing, researching all sorts of different strategies, drawing from my own life lessons, because there have been times in my career where I felt stuck myself.
Yeah.
And, there's the book that preceded How Women Rise. What got you here won't get you there. And so the behaviors, the mindsets that enable you to attain your current level of success, you may need to leave some of those behind. Because where you're going requires a different set of competencies, a different set of skills. Right?
Different mindset too.
And there's this beautiful chart that you see in the old management theory books, and it shows the balance of competencies required based on where you are in the organization. So as a supervisor, you rely more on your technical capabilities. The people skills you have to have, because it's all about getting things done with and through other people.
Yes.
But that's where the focus is, technical and the human skills. When you go up to middle management, less technical, still need the human skills. Now you're starting to introduce more conceptual skills. And then when you get to the top level, not so much the technical stuff, because you have people who will do that.
Exactly.
But the human skills and the conceptual, strategic thinking skills, etc. Right? But what happens is that we tend not to want to let go of the focus on technical stuff, because that's how we got here, by being really good at the technical work. But that's not what they're looking for in the C-suite.
No. They want you to move above and beyond that.
Exactly. And so I decided, so the book came to my attention and I started reading it. And as I'm reading the book, it's exactly what I'm telling people in terms of how you're going to get unstuck. You have to change the mindset. You have to change behavior. You have to leave some habits behind. And it's not that we're saying those are bad habits. We're saying they're no longer fit for purpose. What got you here won't
get you there.
So
preach it.
So that's one. The other thing that I wish I could get the biggest soapbox in the world to talk about this is psychological safety.
Safety.
And I know you are
Huge.
huge on this with
Absolutely.
you and the self-care and
Yeah.
the things that go with that.
Uh-huh.
Listen, I think the pandemic has amplified the importance of psychological safety.
Yes.
And psychological safety is about people thinking that it's okay for me to be vulnerable. It's okay for me to take risks. It's okay for me to learn on the job.
Mhm.
But if they're worried about security of tenure, if they're worried that they may be unemployed if they make a mistake, if your culture says that we bury mistakes and the people who made them,
Yes.
then you don't have psychological safety.
At all. At all.
And you know what? You know what else you lose when you lose psychological safety? Innovation,
Mhm.
creativity,
All
because
shot.
that
all
requires
shut out.
risk.
Yep.
That requires risk
Yes.
taking.
Risk
So people
and
stay
courage
in their
to speak
comfort
up.
zone. They're afraid to ask questions because they don't want to appear dumb. They're afraid to ask questions because they don't want you to think that you're challenging, that they're challenging it. Like I said, I'm looking for the biggest soapbox in the world to talk about psychological safety.
Right.
And,
here's part one. Here's part one of your soapbox. And I'm going to give you part two of that soapbox when you speak at Disrupt HR.
Yes. Thank you so much for that.
Yes.
And it's going to be about something around psychological
I know.
because
Bring
it just isn't getting enough attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I am so looking forward to Disrupt HR next year. Amazing speakers. I'm looking forward to all the topics coming our way. So thank you so much for sharing that, Joan. Tell me this is the biggest question. What is the biggest misconception about our profession, HR, that really bothers you, that you want to set the record straight on right here, right now?
Actually, I'm going to surprise you, I think, with my answer here, because I think too many HR practitioners fully understand and appreciate the magnitude of the role that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and I'll go back to how I started my story, that I started out by saying, I'm not going to do this unless I have a seat at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Because you cannot be making decisions about strategy and so on and then telling HR about it afterwards. Exactly. You need them there contributing to the decision-making process in terms of the analysis, the projections, etc. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we're waiting for an invitation to the table rather than making a compelling case of why they need us at the table, that better decisions are made, there's better execution of decisions that are made, and that there is monitoring, evaluation, and follow-up of those decisions. Yeah. So that's the misperception. I think that too many HR practitioners do not understand the scope of the function. Yes. And I think we need to fix that.
And especially in the Caribbean, because I think more and more, I was reading a report recently that was produced by Sage People. And they were saying that through the pandemic over the last 20 months, that the C-suite has recognized the strategic value in HR. However, there are still a few things that they have concerns about, which is they don't think HR is busy enough. And they don't think that the usefulness after the pandemic will be sustainable. Well, nothing could ever be more untrue. But are we helping to create that perception? And that's what the report was on. The report was on the perception of HR to the C-suite and what we need to do to change that. We need to become more technical driven. We need to become more data driven. We need to really focus on understanding what the business needs and marrying those two things together and creating robust people strategies that matter. And I thought all of that to say, like, I'm 100% with you when it comes to maximizing that. And I remember also sometime back, one of my dear friends, Ron Johnson, told me he was interviewing a friend of his, Jane White. She's from Trinidad. And when she first got her leadership role in HR, she said she literally dragged her chair to the table. So if you know you need that seat at the table. Yes, you build your case, but sometimes you literally have to get up and drag your seat to the table. And I think that is the point that we are really at right now. You know, if you are not getting that say, drag your seat over to the table and let them know that you're here and you belong, and show your work.
Yeah, and I said to my clients, you can sit and wait for an invitation, or you can go knock on the door and make the case for them to let you in. But when you show up, be ready.
Ready. Yes. Be ready. Awesome.
And stop sweating the small stuff. Like, who's getting credit for work that you did? Who cares? Go on and continue to shine. And in due time, they won't be able to claim everything that you're doing. But let your work speak for you.
Yes. I agree 1000% with that. And with that being said, Joan Underwood, you survived your time in the sound booth today. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. I am so looking forward to sharing this information with the audience. Guys, if you do not have a copy of that book, please go get the Manager's First Aid book. You need it in your life more than you could ever know. And I promise you that the nuggets that are shared in there are going to help you to propel your career in leadership exponentially. And you'll be thanking me after. So go get it. Go get it right now. Joan, all the best to you, my dear. And I look forward to continuing to develop our friendship and learning more from you every single day.
As I from you, Julie, and you keep on doing what you're doing. You have an amazing platform, and I salute your authenticity. I salute your passion.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us in the sound booth today. I hope that you found this information from this episode useful. You can find me on all social media platforms at I am Julie Turney. That's I-am Julie Turney. And you can find this episode or this show on most digital platforms, Google Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, you name it, we're there. Special thanks to Ability CBT for helping me to put this content together for you. And I will see you again in the next Sound Off.